Today I am going to talk about prejudice. I want to talk in detail about how prejudice hinders the attainment of enlightenment and how we can get rid of it. Let's imagine that a family who used to live in a house with only one bedroom moves into a three-bedroom house. Those people would probably be happy and say, "What a spacious house we can live in now." Suppose now that a certain family lives in a house that is 2 or 3 times the size of a three-bedroom house. What would these people think if they had to move into a three-bedroom house? They would probably think, "How miserable we are. We're unlucky. And now we have to move into such a small house." Right? Let's reflect on these two cases. The houses that both families move into are the same, three-bedroom houses. So there is no difference in size. However, such a house seems spacious for a family moving from a one-bedroom home and seems cramped for a family who used to live in a much larger house. Why do you think there is such a difference of opinion? I used the house as an example. What about cars? For a not-so-wealthy person who has finally been able to get a driver's license, it would be a great joy to buy a used car for 300 or 400,000. Is that what they cost now? So for 600. He'll probably think, "I finally have my car." On the contrary, a person who is used to driving a car worth $1 million to $4 million will not be able to call this used car a car. However, it is the same car for 600,000. Next is the opposite sex. Since there are now more men than women in the community, let's look at this situation through the eyes of a man. Let's imagine that a man who has never been popular with women meets an ordinary girl. They fall in love with each other and spend all their time together. Of course, such a man will be very happy. And on the contrary, let's imagine that there is a man who is tired of his popularity among women. What would happen if that same ordinary girl confessed her love for him? I suppose you can easily guess the result. Can we move on? In all these examples, 2 families or 2 people are offered the same conditions: a 3-bedroom house, a used car for 600,000 yen, and an ordinary girl. However, different people value them differently. And your evaluation of a 3-bedroom house will also be different depending on whether you previously lived in a 1-bedroom house or a huge house. You'll appreciate a used car differently, too, depending on whether you're poor or used to limousines. The same is true of the opposite sex. That is why Sakya Muni, the victor in truth, said, "All pleasure and suffering arise from conditions." So we cannot be happy as long as we are dependent on circumstances. You may say, "This is strange. When a man exchanges a 1-bedroom house for a 3-bedroom house, he is happy." That's right. In that case, the person will be happy. But this world is inconstant. As you know, things are constantly changing. And this family may have to move back into a 1-bedroom house. Maybe they'll have to sell their hard-earned car. In this case, the person will be unhappy. The girl may fall in love with someone else. And when she says goodbye, it will also cause misery. Thus, we experience pleasure or suffering depending on external circumstances and conditions. We continue to suffer or experience fleeting joys from an infinite past so distant that it is unimaginable. As I said, this is because we are governed by circumstances and conditions. Because we have preconceptions. If they confuse us, we don't see the real situation. Therefore, prejudice is also an obstacle on the path to enlightenment. How do people who have reached enlightenment think and feel? If you reach enlightenment, if you reach the stage of self-awareness, then you are free from any influence. A 3-bedroom house becomes just a 3-bedroom house for you. Whether you have lived in a larger house or a smaller house before, you will not be influenced by these conditions. A 1-bedroom house is just a 1-bedroom house and nothing else. You experience neither suffering nor joy. The same is true for a 3-bedroom house. Your feelings won't depend on whether you drive 600,000, 2 million, or 3 million cars. Or no matter how beautiful a person's appearance is, such things will not affect you at all. It will not affect you. You will become capable only of feeling the beauty and purity of the human soul. You will cease to be interested in people who, if anything, can tell you, goodbye, in this ridiculously short life of 50 or 60 years. With your intuitive knowledge, you can recognize those who have a pure heart and who can truly love you. Such is the man who has attained enlightenment. A spiritual practitioner should be able to judge people correctly. Be careful, because usually, people try to appear better than they are. So, for example, I think women use makeup to look prettier than they are. And recently I heard that there are also items of men's cosmetics. I had a friend named O. He married for love. But when his wife washed off her makeup, he got a big shock. That kind of relationship between spouses is easily destroyed. Look at the women in the community. They don't abuse makeup, but they are illuminated by the shining beauty of their souls. It is far better to cleanse your heart and show its purity than to adorn yourself with cosmetics. As you do your spiritual practice, you will realize this. If you want to get on the path of attaining enlightenment, you should express everything as it is. Cosmetics is one example of many. You should express not only beauty but everything as it is. This will bring you good fortune and lead you to a happy world after death. Expressing things as they mean getting rid of your passions. Those who are at the mercy of their desires try to look better or more significant than they are. You need to get past that level as soon as possible and move even further. The enlightened ones can see things as they are without being influenced by any condition or circumstance, not only because they've gotten rid of prejudices, but also because they have no passions. If you are not subject to passions and desires, even if external conditions change for the worse, you feel nothing. When you move into a small house from a big house, you think, "How I hate this little house. I like the bigger one." In doing so, you are experiencing misery. If you do not desire anything, there is no problem. You can see anything as it is without feeling the slightest distress. Moreover, you can see things in the right way. This is why the scriptures of Buddhism and Yoga say, "See the world as it is and live naturally." What is meant by living naturally is not wanting more from life than what you have under existing conditions. Existing conditions are karma given to you. A person lives in accordance with their karma. But only this karma changes. It changes as we challenge the practice of the 6 limits. Next, I would like to talk about this practice that creates good karma and leads us to happiness. In Big Chariot Buddhism, this practice is called the 6 paramitas. These are the 6 spiritual practices of sacrifice, keeping the precepts, patience, perseverance, meditation, samadhi, and wisdom, which are practiced to the limit. At the heart of this spiritual practice is the limit of sacrifice. Since 75% of you here today have already attended a seminar 2 or 3 or 4 times, I think you know that there are 3 kinds of ultimate sacrifice: the sacrifice of a state, the sacrifice of contentment, and the sacrifice of law. The sacrifice of assets means, we need only food and clothing to live, but we will sacrifice the rest for this world or for the truth. The sacrifice of solace means this: we are in touch with the law of truth, so our soul is at peace. Of course, because you are not yet achievers, you probably still have a little suffering. However, many people have much more suffering. Let us give them peace of mind. Let us help them to free their souls. This is what the sacrifice of solace is all about. What is the sacrifice of the law? It means this: we know the law of truth and the laws of the universe. Let us tell them to all people. Let us explain them to everyone. Let us make an effort to gather all people around the truth. This is the sacrifice of the law. When you reach perfection in the practice of sacrifice, the Guru, and in your case that might be me, gives each of you commandments. For example, be especially persistent in this, or don't do this in your daily life. The practitioner must keep the commandments received, no matter how hard it may be. This is the persistent and consistent practice of keeping the commandments. Because of the merits of the sacrifice, good things will also come to you. The circumstances around you will change. Thanks to the merits of keeping the commandments, nothing bad will happen to you. You will be able to get rid of the uncontrolled devil state. In the devil state, a person associates with demons from the lower part of the astral world. It brings failures, conflicts, and mental disorders. Therefore, sacrifice and keeping the commandments are worth practicing, even though the practice seems difficult. The next practice we must engage in is the limit of patience, that is, the limit of endurance. This means constantly challenging our abilities. For example, the practice of meditation is extremely difficult. When I started this practice, it was difficult for me to endure even 3 minutes. However, I was patient. Time after time I increased the meditation time. 15 or 16 hours of meditation is not difficult for me now. These are the fruits of practicing patience. Through this persistent and consistent practice of patience, it is possible to develop impeccable willpower and the ability to concentrate. This provides the basis for the sustained concentration of consciousness. Such concentration is necessary for Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga. This practice will affect your real life as well. For you will be able to tolerate an environment that to an ordinary person would seem to be distressing. In other words, the limit of your patience with suffering will increase. And this is a very good thing. I talked about sacrifice, keeping the commandments, and patience. What's next? I think you already know. Persevering effort awaits us. Persevering effort in spiritual practice and persevering effort to walk in the way of truth. The 3 previous limits, sacrifice, keeping the commandments, and patience, become the basis for the practice of persevering effort. In short, all your previous merits form the basis of the practice of persevering effort. Based on the 3 frontiers, what should we apply our persevering effort to? For example, reading the sutras and spreading the true teachings. This is not the same as the sacrifice of the law of truth in the limits of sacrifice. Sacrificing the law is simply telling the people around you the truth, but that is not enough to improve in the persistent effort. You should go to many places and tell the truth. You will say, "You are all mistaken. Here is the law of truth." This is the ultimate practice of persistent effort. It is the same with meditation. You must be fully immersed in meditation, putting it above all else, otherwise, it will not be a persistent effort. For example, while the participants of this seminar are eating, one man is struggling to wash the dishes. What he is doing is, along with the ultimate practice of persevering effort, also the ultimate practice of patience. Don't you think so? He washes the dishes so that you, after eating out of clean dishes, will enjoy the spiritual practice. He gives it his all. Every day all he does is wash dishes. But he's only human, too. Doing it every day, one day he might want to give it all up. But he patiently continues. That's what patience is. He has deeply realized that this, too, is his spiritual practice, and he has begun to work even harder to help others in their practice. His persevering effort is to be commended. I think his practice is beautiful. You can apply it to anything. Realize, this is my spiritual practice, and practice every day to the best of your ability. It is bound to be connected with the law. This is the ultimate practice of persevering effort. The important thing here is whether or not your practice is connected to the law of truth. Only when you have fully mastered this step you can begin meditative practice properly. When you start a meditation practice, you have 2 paths. One way is to become a big chariot Buddha, and the other way is to become a Tantra Buddha. There are these 2 paths. Buddha refers to an awakened and enlightened person. Big chariot means the activity of saving all beings, bringing them to the true world. So, the Buddhas of the great chariot carry out salvation. On the other hand, the Buddhas of the small chariot interrupt their relations with other people and independently reach the stage of enlightenment. The big chariot Buddha simply knows the truth and preaches its law. The Tantra Buddha not only learns the truth and preaches the law, but also demonstrates the higher siddhi, thus winning people's faith. These are the two types of Buddhas. First, to become an ordinary Buddha, a Buddha of the Great Chariot, one must proceed immediately to enjoy. Zenjo is a word of Chinese origin that means meditation. In this case, meditation does not mean just sitting on the floor. The essence of this meditation is the resolution of the questions, who am I? And what am I? For example, I am Michael Jackson. But this does not indicate my true nature. Michael Jackson is nothing more than a fixed idea called name that you and I use. It wouldn't make any difference if the name Mr. N or Grey Fish were in place of Michael Jackson. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the meditation that poses the question, who am I? Who am I? I am a human being. No, that definition is no good, because human is also a fixed idea. The word person expresses nothing. You can't end your meditation on the word person without making clear the actual state of affairs. I am a living being. How about that answer? That is correct. I am at least alive. Even if I am in a coma, I am still at least a living being. But if I die, I can no longer be said to be a living being. Here the interpretation of the word I is easily changed. That is, I will no longer be a living being. I want to draw your attention to the fact that I gave an example of the meditative process of those who believe in the immortality of the soul. Those who have become achievers realize the eternity of the soul through their own experience of death, and others. So, let's continue. Could it be that the self is the senses? Maybe the self is that which is felt through the sense of touch. Am I the self? Do I exist or not when I am deprived of my senses? Of course, I exist. If so, then I am not the senses. I will live even if I go blind. I will live even if I go deaf. I will live even if I lose my sense of taste or touch. Therefore, I am not the senses. Then what am I? You may have guessed that I'm talking about the 4 manifestations of memory fixation meditation. This meditation allows us to understand that I am neither a soul nor a fixed idea. What am I, then? Earlier I wrote about this in the paper. Today I would like to continue the explanation. Am I the will that is responsible for these or those decisions? Is the I that acts in dreams or the astral world me or not? No, and it is not me. Maybe I am the consciousness in the causal world, a world in another dimension, consisting only of information. Information is like light, which is projected onto the astral world. No, and that's not me either. Here the Bodhisattva, who has gone through the first 4 ultimate practices, is suffering. His suffering is very deep. He is tormented by the question, who am I? In the process of his persistent search for an answer, an idea illuminates his mind. I understand. I am like transparent water. You can realize everything only when you experience it yourself. Because it is impossible to express such a state of mind. And if you reach this stage, you will be able to know everything with the help of intuition. A person who has reached such a state is called an awakened one, or a Buddha. That's what a big chariot Buddha is. This may sound strange to you. We call a huge statue of the Buddha a Buddha or a Tathagata. But it is not a Buddha, just a statue of a Buddha. The true Buddha, as I said, is an awakened person. A man can rule over all men with logic, capable of perfectly understanding all phenomena in the world. This is the Buddha of the Great Chariot. Meanwhile, some Buddhists thought, that doesn't suit us at all. If someone is a little smarter, they can become a Buddha. Thus arose the practice of Tantra. Tan means esoteric initiation, and Tra means mantra. Several schools emerged with the goal of attainment through the secret practice and recitation of mantras. The Buddha who came to attainment through such practices has superpowers. We in the community follow the practice of Tantra. Our goal is to attain a Tantra Buddha with superpowers. The practices that you are doing now are described in detail in the Guru Yoga Initiation into the Meditations of the High Yoga, or in the March and April Sandali Initiation, so I will not do it here, but learn them properly and practice them, please. Remember, what you are doing is a technique for becoming a Tantra Buddha. At this seminar, I can give you the most perfect technique. But if you do not know the basics, for example, if you cannot meditate in the right posture, if you cannot do pranayama, and if you cannot follow the 4 ultimate practices that I have told you before, it makes no sense. It's like drawing water with a bamboo basket. So you should come up to me or my best students more often and absorb what we have. Think, what is the best thing for me to do now? And learn from us. Strengthen what you are weak in. Practice Zandali meditation and Guru Yoga meditation. Then you can surely become Gaya Samaja. Gaya Samaja is Tathagata Sakyamuni in Tantra, his phenomenal body. The seminars are very short. I will give you the highest practice. That's why you should master the basics by yourself. This is not a commercial project. For as many people as possible to come across this information, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment of 8 words or more.